Dave Holmes called me, and he said, "Can you come up?" I said, "Yeah." I went up, and he said, "I have a favor." I said, "Yeah, Dave, what do you need?" And he said, "How do we get one of the guys to go to work? We've never had somebody with autism working."
I do remember my mom saying something. I was calling her up. I was about 30, I guess. And it's like, oh, okay, it looks like Ari's going to have a job. And I'm like, Ari's going to have a job? And there's this fellow named Joe Bendis, and he's working with Eden. And they're looking for someone they think could be able to, to work, someone who's a graduate of Eden. And they think Ari would be a good candidate. And I'm like, oh, well, Ari, yeah, he probably could do that. I mean, that'd be okay.
And Ari started working for us in March of '81. And we thought the best thing would be to have him work in our coffee area. And Ari's very compulsive. So as soon as you filled that coffee cup, Ari thought he had to make another pot. Then you'd have coffee all over the floor, which was okay. You clean it up. The customers ended up really protecting him because this would happen and they wouldn't call me. They'd go get the mop and they would clean up for Ari. And I'd say, "Everything okay?" "Oh, everything's good, Joe. No problem." So there was this nice relationship building between the customers, the staff, and Ari together. I would say in that first couple of years after Ari, we must have taken in 12 or 14 young people from here. And his mom would come in the store, as other parents did in those early days, and they'd stand somewhere where their child couldn't see them. And she'd watch him from a distance, with tears coming down and everything, just watching him work.
For 25 years, Ari Shiner has been a shining star at this Wawa in Princeton, New Jersey.
I'm always playing catch up with this. I'm always like, oh yeah, Ari's worked there for 10 years, for 20 years, for 30 years, for 4, and it's like, Ari was like a pioneer. And it's a little hard, probably to think of your siblings as pioneers anyway.
Serving our community for 40 years.
Congratulations, Ari.
One person's journey, together with the support of Wawa and Eden, really can light a spark and create opportunities for others.
We expanded this program to where currently Wawa has approximately 750 people in what we call our supportive employment program, and literally thousands over the 40 years that Ari has been with Wawa.
Sometimes I tell people, when I tell people about Ari, or people who sort of know Ari, and I tell them he's worked at Wawa for decades, and they're sort of puzzled. And I'll say, well, if you gave Ari a row of salt shakers 5,000 miles long that were empty, and you told him to fill them all up, he would happily do it for the rest of his life.
You watch his eyes light up when he gets in that cooler. He's focused, he's determined. Like if you go in there to get something, he watches to make sure you're not putting something out of place. He wants everything to be just perfect in there.
Dave Holmes told my parents that there would always be a place at Eden for Ari. It was a great relief for them, especially because shortly thereafter, my mom developed cancer and died pretty young. And it was at that point, when my mom died in 1986, that my dad, who was still working full time, realized that now was the time to take Dave Holmes up on his offer. And sure enough, within a very short period of time, Eden was there to take Ari and give him a life. Remember when he was at Windsor Mills and he was at the apartment there was this funny little thing where I'd pick up Ari and they'd be up on the balcony and I'd knock on the door or whatever. And he'd come out and he was just like completely normal being there in this rather large apartment complex.
It's just a very comfortable feeling, I visited him last month, and Sam was there, a young woman who I'd met before, and she's like, "Oh, Ari, your brother's here and stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, I did tell him I was coming." She goes, "Oh, I know." She said, "I told him a little while ago, your brother's coming." And he kept getting up and looking out the window. I was like, "Oh, that's great,"
He doesn't say much, but once you get to know him, you'll understand his personality. you'll see that he has sparks of laughter. Sometimes he's a little moody, but who isn't? He's just an all-around guy. The most rewarding part of my job is to see that he's happy.
I don't know how Eden gets the caliber of people that they have to work and live in these homes. All of his needs are met. His caregivers that are drawing that balance between being overly caregiving and giving him the space and the, whatever that he needs. And working with people like Ari, severely autistic adults, it's like being a teacher or a minister, It's not so much a job, it's a calling, I'm just so grateful to those people who do all those little things that make Ari's life as rich as it is.
Ari likes stability. He likes to know kind of what's going on. He can work within a context beautifully. And I just think of him as being kind of at peace. He's happy.
If Ari will be the first one to work and then retire, I don't know what's in place, but I know that whatever it is, I'm going to feel comfortable with it.
And I often think about, if Ari was even 5 years older, none of what's happened in his life would have happened. None of it. Eden was always there at the right time for the schooling, right time for work, right time for housing, everything, our family needed and Ari needed. The timing was perfect.
I think that emotionally, on some level, he would understand that Eden is just the best possible place for him. Just the way my mom felt, the way my dad felt, the way David feels, the way I feel, that Eden's a lifesaver. And Eden was just a wonderful concept and a vision that I don't think we would have believed 50 years ago was even possible.